So you can see here we've got our building that we created, the nice shell of the building. And as I mentioned in the previous lecture, you want to kind of bring the whole project into greater and greater focus, starting with kind of a rough model, and then adding detail bit by bit as you go along. And that's what we're going to do today. And let's start with the windows. So the windows, if you look here, first of all, the trim of the windows is flush with the trim of the door. And I left out a window. So let's start with that. Let's start with fixing the trim and then go to the windows, adding the window. And the first thing we need to figure out is how much do we need to change these windows? Now, sometimes when you zoom in and out in Revit, you'll find that the line work is a little hard to understand. Yeah, it's kind of messy. There are a couple of things that you can do to change that. First of all, Revit adjusts the line work based on the scale. The scale is an option down here on the bottom at the view properties. So if I make this a 1/2 inch scale, you see how the lines get a lot cleaner. Other things that you can do, you could make this shaded. Doesn't always help, but sometimes you get a little bit of a shadow there, or not a shadow, but a darker material. And then finally, you could actually turn on shadows. Again, this may not work in our case because we're underneath an overhang. Finally, there is something called detail level. And if you come over here, it's set to coarse. If we choose the fine level, well, there's no detail here, but one thing you might see appear are these doorknobs. The doorknobs are not visible at the lower level, and this is by design. Many things just don't show up at the lower levels of detail because they would slow your model down and cause kind of, I don't know, extraneous snapping, too many objects being snapped to at different scales. And basically, in this case, a little bit of twisting the model. Again, I'm in 3D, so I can hold down Shift and click and drag the scroll wheel, and I can kind of see what's going on. And oh yes, these are the little extra bits of wall right here that I need to get rid of with by expanding the width of the window. Then I could do this by adding trim onto the window, but these are kind of punched windows, so really I just want to make the window a little wider. How do I measure it? Well, there's a simple measuring tool here at the top of your screen called the tape measure tool, I guess, or something like that. And like every other program that we use, there are snaps, endpoint snaps, and we can see here, I just move my mouse over the other endpoint and it's 2 inches. That's how much we have to expand the window. And to do that, it's pretty straightforward. It's just kind of what we did before. You select the window, edit its type properties. So, and if you remember, there's many different family types, so you have to make sure you're editing the correct one and editing the correct field, which is usually what I mess up and make it too tall instead of too wide. But here you go, 4 inches total, 2 on either side. Hit apply and OK, and like magic, the window matches the door. And I could have gone in and measured the door, gotten the door properties and found out how wide that is as well. And if we look at the other side of the building, you'll see here, let me just go to the kind of front elevation. You'll see that the other window has matched the size as well. Don't forget that I aligned these along the center so that they're perfectly aligned. So it doesn't fix my problem here of I have a window that is, I need a smaller window. So what you can do is when you go and, now that we have this window correct, it's 4 feet, 4 inches, an extra 4 inches. If you remember, this is a 3-foot wall. So maybe I'll just make a new family type of this window and make it 3 foot, 4 inches and place it over this door. And if you remember how to do that, go to the window menu, choose the window type that you want, but then edit type and duplicate this. And I probably should name these something a little more clear as to what it is. It's existing fixed window, but it's 36 inches. And now I can just change the dimension to 3 feet and apply and OK. And now I have a window that's 3 feet wide. And like before, I can place it in the wall. And I can use my align tool to align it. Now here we have a problem. I want to align it to the center of this door, but there's, well, first of all, I'm in 3D and align doesn't always work well in 3D. Let's see what happens when I use align. I'll try doing the top of this door frame. See, it's snapping to a lot of different things. I think I've got it there, but you really do have to zoom in, and it doesn't want to align that frame. Well, let's see. I think I've got it. Yep, I got it. But to align the center, I can't get the align tool to find the center. And sometimes when aligning things, we want to be as precise as kind of we can. So going to the elevation view is the way to go. So here we are in the project browser. Let's go down and find our elevations. I believe this is the south one. Oh, lucky me, I got it right. Well, that column is still in the way. It was in the way before, and it's still in the way. But one thing you can do, and this is true in pretty much any view, is you can temporarily hide objects by just right-clicking on them and choose Hide in View. And I could choose just this element, or I could choose all columns if I wanted to. And again, this is a temporary thing. It's only in this view, but as you may have discovered in the past, it's a quick way to allow you to kind of see through other elements or see beyond. So now I can use my align tool, center the door, center the window, lock those puppies in place, and now I have a lovely centered window on top of the door. When I move one, they both go. So there you go. I've got a nice elevation view. And if you remember, this door is right up against this window. And this window, clearly, I have made it a little bit too short, so I can just stretch it out. Okay. And I could use the align tool, but more often than not, the Revit snapping tools will align it properly. Oh, I think I have a little smidge of a wall in here. Let's see if we can get rid of that as well. I'll just use nudge. Oh, except I nudged a little too far. Maybe align is the way to go. Here, we'll use the align tool to clean up this little mess we've made. There we go. Ah, much better. And again, all right, it may be off a tiny bit, but such is life. Changing the parameters of doors as compared to windows is a little more complicated. And the reason is there's just a lot more parameters on a door because there's typically, not always, more bits and pieces. And doors are made up of vertical stiles, horizontal rails, and then typically, in this case, panels, either glass or wood. And you can see from the image of our existing conditions that basically these have kind of a top and center rail, lock rail they call it, that are about the same dimension. The bottom one we can't quite make out, but typically that's a little bit bigger. And everything looks a little bit thinner than we have in our project. Again, we're going by kind of what it looks like as opposed to exact dimensions. So now we want to edit the door. Hey, we did that with the window. Shouldn't this be easy? Let's pick one of the doors here and get its parameters. And just choose edit type. And if you remember, this was our existing door, and we changed the dimension of the width. And what you'll find is that if this is set up properly, and I have the preview active here. Down at the bottom, there's a preview window. The nice thing about the preview window is that if you click on it, it often has the dimension that you're changing in there. So for example, the width, the height, maybe I want to change the dimension of the stiles to something like 4 inches. And if I click 4 and enter, it will actually provide the dimensions that I'm changing. It'll show you on the image the object. Without having to open up the entire family. So, okay, that looks great. And the top rail, 4 5/8 inches. Let's go and make the lock rail about the same dimension, 4 5/8 inches. And then we'll make the, and you see how it shows the dimension there in my little preview. Okay, and this preview, by the way, there's a lot of different views that you can use depending on what you're editing. So in this case, I could choose, well, 3D view is fine, but I could choose elevation. And a nice thing about 3D view is I can orbit the model. So in case I want to see the effect on other parts of the object. All right, so here we go. We've changed the style. Let's go to the, back to the elevation view. And let's change the bottom rail to 8 inches, I think I said, maybe. Or let's try 6. 6 is probably plenty for the likes of us. And when you change it, you should see that. And that, I think that looks a little closer to the original image. Now there, if I look at this, the height of that center rail is a little high. It looks like it's right in the middle of the door. And if I edit type and I say, oh, oops, that's not the door. This is the door. Edit type. There's no way to adjust that. Darn it, they don't have a parameter for that. And what that means is we need to go and edit the door family. And when you have to edit a complex family that has a lot of parameters, sometimes it's a little hard to play catch up with the family that was created by somebody else. But let's take a look at this one to see kind of how it works. I'm going to click Edit Family, and it brings up the door family. You say, oh, that's a very handsome looking door. And if you go, this is basically a mini project. This is a standalone component. And usually there are reference levels. So if I go to the floor plan of this, there's a reference level, and there are all these reference planes. And again, you may have seen this in many places. And sometimes these reference planes have names. Sometimes they don't. Okay, so of course none of these have names. And this one is the glass layer. Okay, so the glass is locked to the glass reference plane level. And this is also true in elevation view. Again, this is frequently where you see these reference planes. The dimension of those styles is shown up here by having two reference planes and the geometry locked to those two reference planes. And that's why when you change the style dimension, the number that's defined by this dimension string, and here, let me change the scale here so that you can read these a little better. That's why the dimension changes on the styles, okay? Because each of these is locked to a style parameter. So our problem is the thing is too height. And the strike height, that's the actual height of the doorknobs. We don't want to change the strike height. We want to change these guys. This is the top and bottom of the center rail. We want to move those down. Well, if we do that, here, let's try that. I'm going to hold Control, select them both, and I'll just nudge them down. Look what's happening. See the bottom of the door? That's moving. And the reason is it's constrained by a dimension. So if I remove those constraints, oh, well, now we're free to do whatever we want, but see how the door is actually stretching. So we don't want to do that. We want to unlock those references. And, when you start unlocking the locked reference planes in a component, you can get into a lot of trouble, so you do have to be cautious. And this is the moment where you might want to go hunting to see if you can find a door that's closer to your needs. One of the all-time favorites is good old Revit City, and I searched in Revit City for a double wood door with glass, and I could definitely spend more time looking in here, single wood door with glass or just wood door. Your Boolean terminology is going to be very important. Some of these are actually pretty close. I could use one of these. Here's actually one that is probably about as close as we're going to get. Other websites you might try, BIM Object is a good one. It has a lot of different things. You can search for different types of files. So I could tell it, just show me Revit files, SketchUp, that kind of thing, and see what you find. And often these are really good files too. The nice thing about these is they are tied to manufacturers more often than not. And I could also go looking in the 3D warehouse in SketchUp. However, for something like a door, it's a little more tricky using those types of objects because doors typically have reference planes in them for the wall that the door is inserted. Let's take a look at that that model again. If I go to the default 3D view of this model, you can see that there's trim sticking out from the door. There's a frame that kind of wraps around the wall. This is a reference wall. So usually what happens is the front trim and the back trim are kind of locked to the front face and back face of that wall. And that's how Revit knows which one is interior and which one is exterior, because walls have an interior and an exterior. So you can see it's actually quite complicated. And what you want to decide is, do I want to deal with the misery of a downloaded document versus the misery of trying to fix this door? And when evaluating if an imported door or a door from some other location is going to be worth it, one, you want to check to see if it has the family types that are going to be helpful for you. So I'm going to click this button up here. This is the Family Types button. And that will list basically all the parameters that are in this particular model without having to go and kind of graphically track them all down. So you can see here there's thickness, there's height, there's the rail width, and the base, center, and top rails, the style width. So it actually does pretty much have all the things that we want, including the trim width, which is awfully handy because now we can make it match the exact dimension of a door. If you think about it, a door, the width of the leaf of the door, the actual door itself, may be 3 feet, but you could have a little bit of trim on either side, and that's why we had to make our windows a little bit wider. If I remember correctly, the trim width on our doors was 2 inches instead of 3, or in the windows. So we'll have to change that when we get it into the model. Now, looking at the front elevation, you can see that actually all of the parameters that are associated with this door, they're very similar, right? And of course, it makes a lot of sense. And what we'll find when we do parametric components ourselves is that a lot of the templates for doors include a lot of these standard elements here. Anyway, I think this one will work. Let's load it into our project and check out, see what it looks like. So click the Load into Project button. I'm sure I'm going to have to make a change, so I'll just not load it and close, but just load it into the gas station project. And let's go to a 3D view where we can kind of see it a little more cleanly. And yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. Now, we do need to make a few dimensional changes, so I'll go to Edit Type. And if you remember, we were looking at the family types before in the family model, and this is where they show up in the main model. So remember, these are 2 separate files. The family types, you can kind of predefine doors and windows. If I remember correctly, ours that we were using are 80 inches, not 84. It's a masonry dimension, I think. And then the other thing is we want to go, let's see, 6'8" seems fine. I'll leave all the rails as they are. Well, maybe I'll drop them all down by, well, no, I can't decide. I'll make it 8 inches instead of 9. See if that looks any better. I think the style width, that looked better at 4 inches. Seems they're kind of a skinny window. And the top rail will make that 4 inches as well. Okay, so, oh, and then the trim, we can change the trim. If I remember, the trim, it's a 3-foot door with 2-inch trim on either side. That's what we found when we measured at the beginning. So we can change all of that. And we can even rename this so that it's clear. We can call it existing 36 by 80. Okay, so now what we've done, click OK. Of course, you can see, well, it doesn't, not really all that clear in the preview, but you can see the door gets a wee bit smaller. Suddenly it aligns with the masonry unit, and the trim gets the same. Now, of course, I actually don't need a door here, but I do need a door on this side of the building. So with any luck, I can just select this door. And once you have a different door loaded in, you can just swap it. It's as easy as that. If there are any conflicts, it may be that there's a slight dimensional variation here. Yeah, it looks like it's slightly off. Oh, maybe because I moved the door so that it is over that wall. I guess there was a reason that I had that little extra piece of wall there. Okay, fine. We will change that by going to the exterior here. Oops, wrong exterior. By the way, when you have multiple files open, you see how I have a 3D view here. One quick way to kind of clean up your Revit interface, get rid of those extra tabs, is just close inactive windows. And what that will do, it will leave open only the most recent view used in each family. So this is the family I just loaded. You can see the name up here. This is the Revit family that is the base family. I'm just going to close that one, and I don't even need to save that. And then in this one, I'm going to leave that open. But what you'll see is that as I open up other windows here, plan, elevation, you know, they can often be indecipherable from the other windows for other files, so it does get a little confusing. You take advantage of that. The other thing actually that's up here that's kind of nice, let's go to a 3D view. Sometimes all those line weights, remember we changed the scale so that the line weights were less annoying. Here, let's re-annoyingify them. Turn them back to 1/8 inch scale. You see how that's actually hard to read. This button here makes everything thin lines. That's a lot easier to see without actually changing the scale of the drawing. Anyway, I better clean up my elevation here. Let me just select this, shorten it up, and these guys need to slide over. And you can see that the alignment lock is still in place in this door, although I do think the height is a little short. That's interesting. I thought I measured that correctly, but again, no problem. Let's just measure what that distance is, 2 inches. So somehow, maybe the top trim on that door I was using was a little bit taller. Let's take a look at the original image, but I think maybe I'll just make this window a wee bit taller, 2 inches taller, so that we keep the trim nice and thin all the way around. Now, we do have the problem in that we only have one door and we need two. So what are we going to do? Well, we absolutely could try flexing the dimensions of this door and adding reference planes and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we don't want to spend that much effort doing it. And sometimes you can do a workaround. In this case, the door and its frame create an opening when it is loaded into the model. So maybe what I'll do is I'll break this guy into two separate components. So I have my current component. I'm going to go and save as, file, save as, and I'll save it as a different name. And I'll call this version just the frame, and I'll save it where my other door was, and because I don't want to mess up that other door that is already working just fine. So I'll choose save. And then I'll do it again. I'll call it just the door leaf, this copy. Okay, and make sure you remember which one you're using here. And again, I don't want to have to deal with all of these parameters and figuring out which one is locked to where, right? I could, in theory, start unlocking things, but then the door may go completely haywire, and we don't want that. Okay, so let's start with the just the door leaf component here. And what we want to do is get rid of this frame on all sides. And so I'm going to take a look at this in the 3D view. It's just a little easier to see what we are getting. And as you may have learned with Revit, there are ways that you can select different objects. It's super hard, frankly, sometimes to get the object. But if you mouse over an object and you start hitting tab, it will get the different pieces. But more often than not, with something like a frame, I should be able to grab it right here and just hit delete. Okay. Now there is some little legacy here. This is part of the frame in the background, so you do want to delete that as well. And same with this guy. If you select it, you've got the frame and the mullion apparently this time, so we should be able to delete it. Oh, except here's the lines representing the frame. Wonder why I didn't see one on the other side. Maybe that will show up later when we least expect it. Sometimes if things are not easy to see, you can just go to wireframe view and they'll show up. But I believe I've gotten the correct information here. So, and I could save this file, and I probably will. You know, just hit Control S to save. I've already renamed it, so I'm not going to overwrite the existing one. However, I think what I'll do, I'm just going to load it into the project. And when I do that, make sure I choose the correct file. And if it's in here already, you will want to overwrite it. And of course, this is the moment of panic everyone has when they load into things. And yes, you just changed the parameters. So of course you want to change the parameters in the model. And now I actually don't see it in here. So let me just stick it in the wall. And if I had changed the dimension of this before, I will want to change it back. Like I've just overridden the parameters. For instance, this one is 36 inches by 84. So I want to edit this type and tell it, in fact, I'll duplicate this and I'll just call it existing double door and okay. And the height is actually 6'8". Okay, 6'8". and the width is 2 feet. Okay, and there's no trim because I deleted it, but what's interesting is all those parameters do remain. Click apply and OK. You see the door gets smaller. And I can even copy this door. Okay. And the adjacent door, the arrows, the indicators point at the hinges. So this guy is backwards. So we want to use the mirror tool. Just make sure when you use the mirror tool, you don't have copy selected up here in the upper left. And I can mirror it along its center so that I have what looks suspiciously like a pair of double doors. Okay, and they've cut the wall opening and everything. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, and here we are back in the just the frame model. And now I want to delete the door. Okay, so I should be able to just select it and hit delete. Hopefully I haven't gotten anything weird. And of course, Revit models have a lot of bits and pieces. So in this case, you want to make sure that you leave the stuff that you need. One thing that's really important, let me go to a front elevation here, is that Revit cuts a door opening. Now it's pretty hard to find that opening, but if I drag my mouse so that I get a selection window, anything that falls inside that window is selected, and filter it, you'll see there's an opening cut in there. There's probably an easier way to find this thing, but I don't know how to do that. Oh, you know, maybe I will get rid of these guys here. Let me just select these two and delete them. Now, one thing that's important to note about Revit families is some objects can exist in one family member or another, just like, I don't know, blue eyes or left-handedness in a human family. If I click the family types, if you're going to delete some of these detail lines, these lines that are just for reference, make sure you choose the correct family type. In this case, my existing frame is the one that already has the dimension and the trim width. Oh, I forgot to change the trim width and the correct white width. Apply, okay. But then this is where you want to delete these guys because they can exist in one family type and not the other, and which makes sense because sometimes you want to have annotation for a specific option, maybe the number of drawers in a desk or something like that. Anyway, let's load this puppy into the project and see what happens. And like magic, there it is, our beautiful perfect frame, exactly the right size. I'll use my align tool to align it properly. Again, elevations are great that way. And then I will do another thing, which is create a group out of this guy so that I can easily manipulate it later on, put it on the other side of my project here. So I'll just hold down Control and select these guys. The reason I'm selecting them that way instead of a window is I think there's actually something behind here on the far wall that will get selected, and I have to make sure I don't select that because that would be bad. I don't want that in part of my group. Anyway, and there's a create group button, and what this does allows you to connect dissimilar objects. Click create group, and we'll even call it whatever, double doors or something like that. And the beauty of the group, I mean, even if I delete this one, the group still exists in the project. So let's go to the other elevation view, maybe the south one, I think is where I have some double doors. Oh, yep, that's where they are. And I can delete these guys. You can't replace them from the properties menu here because it's not a family. It's actually kind of a collection of families. However, if you go to the architecture tab, there is a model group button and you can place a model group. And in this case, we have, there aren't any by default, so you have to load one in. But anyway, here's our model group. We can load it right in and it behaves like any other object. And we can align it and we can align the windows. If you remember, the window needs to add a couple inches on the top of it. And here I've done the same here. I've replaced them with my new fancy schmancy windows, doors, and adjusted the window. Now, in this view, if you remember, and I'm sure you do, I have hidden my columns, and I want to bring them back. And anything that is temporarily hidden like that, you can use this little light bulb down at the bottom, the Reveal Hidden Objects menu, and there they are in all their glory, just waiting for us to unhide them. And yes, indeed, there is an unhide button, unhide the category. Okay, then check the box, and there you go. Your elevation is perfect. And that's how you can modify doors to create at least something that's pretty close to what we are hoping for. Obviously, I could tweak them and spend some time studying the photo. Other things that I could do are add in hinges in these this door component, but I don't think there, no, it doesn't look like there's any in there. I probably should go get a door hinge or doorknob, but I will wait for that one. Well, I don't know why I want to wait. I'll go to good old Revit City and grab a doorknob. For a moment there, it was a little more than I could handle, but I think I'm going to swing the other way on this and put the doorknob in, show you how to do it. Again, Revit City, you download the object and import it. So here's the actual doorknob if you want to check it out, or you could just actually load it right into your Revit project directly. If you choose Insert and then Load Family, you can actually browse for that doorknob and place it directly. Either one works, and it will upgrade. Then you have to figure out how to place the object. And that's the problem with Revit City, is you never know how any object is made, how it's going to be placed. But it does come in as a component, just like in the main model. And this is called nesting. And you can see here, it looks to me like it's not hosted, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure that thing is hosted properly. So it looks like we just have to move it into position, and that's fine. We can do that. We'll just go to the front elevation, and as you remember, the arrows point at the hinges, so presumably the doorknob is at some point on the other side of the hinges, so you can just move it into place. We should probably check to make sure that it's okay in plan, and it does look like it's okay in plan. Okay. And then, like we've done before, load it into your project and you should be good to go. And if you have opened it, just remember anything you have open, you can load one component into another component. So make sure you choose the gas station when you do that. It will overwrite the existing parameters, and with any luck, some doorknobs will show up. Those are looking a little bit high to me. I think, oh, maybe because we edited the door a little bit. So I'll go back to the family and lower them down just a touch. Oh yes, I can see I put them in pretty high. So let's put them down here on the style, which honestly makes a little bit more sense anyway. And we should be able to load that in and replace the other one, like you said. All right, so there we go. I'm not sure why it looks high, but I'm going to leave it for now. And we could load that into the single door as well. And you can see how that, it kind of gives a nice level of detail to your project. Well, yeah, one last complication of Revit families is that there are often things visible in one view and not the other. I mean, for instance, we don't even want to see these doorknobs in plan view. Revit does allow you to manipulate that. Select the object you want to manipulate and choose visibility settings, and it will tell you which views it will be available in and which detail level. So for instance, the doorknobs, we don't necessarily need those in coarse or even medium level visibility. You'll still see them here in the plan. And I do want the door swing to show up in plan, but maybe I don't want like the door leaf or some of these other things. Again, anything you don't want to see, you just come in here and choose visibility settings and choose, and this one's already apparently hidden in plan. And I'd want to go back to the door frame, the original one that I had, and make sure I don't have any things that are visible. These are just lines, so I absolutely don't want to see those in plan twice, right? I only want to see them where the doors are. Oh yes, here I am in the door frame, and it does actually have door swings in it, so I'll just want to select those guys. I can actually just delete them because we don't need them, right? Just make sure you don't delete anything too important. That's always the risk with Revit. There's all sorts of hidden things in there that we're unaware of. And don't forget, you have to do this for both the single and the double doors. Here's my single door. I think one of these things is showing up in plan. If you're not sure what it is, just select all the stuff and choose visibility settings if you can get them here. I think I had things. I can't change the visibility. Let's see, that's not showing up in plan, so maybe it's just this little guy here. Nope, not that guy. There's something else here that's showing up in plan. Must be one of these guys. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. Click OK, and then load that into your project. And any objects that are showing up, like down here, see how the little square disappears. Okay, don't forget to save your drawing. I'm going to tap Control S, which you can't see, but you can hit the save button up on the upper right. I'm also going to close all the extraneous windows here, tabs on Revit. By the way, there's the window tile and tile windows button, either TW or WT. WT allows you to have multiple windows visible at the same time, as opposed to TW, which makes you just have one in the front. Another handy navigation tool, not exactly earth-shattering, but handy. Anyway, I don't want them tiled. I just want to get rid of all these extra windows. Now, let's do something easy. That door was very stressful. Doors are super complicated, as are windows, curtain walls. Let's do a slab on grade. Let's go to the ground floor plan, and this kind of building, especially California, they don't have to worry about frost. They can have a slab on grade. And what that means is basically, yeah, pour a bunch of concrete on the ground. That's exactly what it is. And we can do that with a floor. Okay, draw a floor. Let's not use a curb. Let's do a generic concrete floor here. In fact, maybe I'll take the curb type, edit the type, duplicate it, and call it slab on grade. Okay. And let's edit the structure, make it a little bit thicker. I think what we'll do, a typical slab on grade, commonly they'll have a kind of thickening at the edge of the slab, so we will add that. Anyway, and there you go. And you know, I could change the materials and all that, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it as is. And then you can sketch in any number of ways. Walls are great because, or floors are great because you can pick walls to basically adjust the sketch to fit the walls. You can also just pick lines, which is super handy when you don't have walls, but you just want something curvy, like a sidewalk or a pathway that might have a slightly irregular edge. But anyway, I'm just going to draw a rectangle right here over the entire outside of the building. That's kind of how slab on grade works. Click the checkbox and let's see what we have wrought here. Oh yes, that's a lovely, lovely slab. And again, one thing about Revit, it's so good at kind of architectural features. In this case, when we were creating the floor, if you click the down arrow next to the floor button, there are a number of other options. Floor by face, again, we saw this where you can make an object, make floors using just a simple mass in Revit or even a SketchUp object. But anyway, what we want is a floor slab edge. And again, this is just a typical sort of thing. You do have to choose what kind of edge is on here. This is the default slab edge. Let's see how big an edge we get when we do that. Oh yeah, that kind of makes a lot of sense. And what that does is it gives a little more bearing capacity. And a lot of Revit objects, like floors, can accept these sorts of elements that glue onto those base objects. Floor slabs, one thing. Another one that we'll look at are wall features, wall sweeps. And so let's take a look at wall sweeps. So walls, you can add features to them that will function on all instances of the wall. And this is super handy when you have things like, for instance, here we have a base that's just painted on. That's a blue base underneath this overall kind of, I don't know what you'd call that, tannish orange color. We can add that in. We can even add in things like wall base on the interior, and it will show up everywhere. Isn't that fun? That is so fun. Let's do that. Now, first of all, you do need the materials. In this case, we're changing the material. So we will go to the Manage tab, click on Materials, and here's our materials library. And we can add in a new material. And when you create a new material, there's a couple of tabs here. And I always, not always, but I try to start on the left side here and give these some name that I'm going to remember in the project. I know I've in the past told everyone use your initials or use an underscore, and that's what I'll do. And maybe I'll call this wall tan color. The graphics, you always want to use the render appearance. And then under the appearance, you can change the color. Now, absolutely, I could load things in from the library, but you know, let's not get out of hand here. I can literally just pick a color that I think is pretty close. I don't know, maybe this color is closer. Okay, and apply. I guess that's maybe a little more orange than I like, but all right, fine. That'll do. And I can also duplicate this material and its assets. And I can actually come in here and just type in the name and call this wall blue. Okay, so there's any number of ways that you can modify these. And I am well aware that I'm going to be changing these colors in Lumion, so I'm not too worried that they're absolutely perfect. So apply and OK, and we will talk more about materials in the next lecture. Here, our purpose is to talk about walls and how we can change them. And all you have to do is select the wall and choose Edit Type. And, obviously, you have to make sure you're getting the correct wall in your project. So I have an interior partition that is different than these exterior partitions. And this is why having separate families is so important. And then you edit the structure. And the trick here is you do need to activate the preview. You can't get away with not having the preview, and the preview has to be in section mode. And now in this section mode, you can do any number of things. So first of all, maybe I'm going to assign a finished layer. And the way that you do that here in the stack of structure, I can insert a new layer, move it up, and then define it as a finish layer, either 4 for the exterior, or if I add another one, move that guy down. I believe 5 is the interior layer. Okay, and this is important because you do actually need to know where each of them are. And they should have some kind of thickness, even if it's just a layer of plaster. 0.25 inches is probably plenty for each of these. But that would be a typical thing. You want to gussy up the masonry. And if you zoom in, you can see, oh yeah, there it is. It's actually different on the top and the bottom. And each of those layers, yes, you guessed it, you can assign a material. Again, this is the exterior side up here. So we want to, well, actually, let's assign it to the sub pieces. Let's make the whole wall the tan color. Okay. Now, just to take a quick digression here, I realized in figuring this out that I have actually reversed my walls. When I drew them with the exterior face on the inside of the building, which was kind of silly. So what that means is when I am editing this wall type and the structure, I should actually put the exterior finish layer on the interior side. I'm sorry, that's confusing, but unfortunately, it sometimes makes these mistakes. So let me add those back in the correct order. Okay, there we go. Now I've got the layers essentially reversed. And if you want to make sure that it looks right, which I probably should have done first, you can just go and look at it in axonometric view. And of course, Revit does not automatically show you materials. You actually need to go to shaded modes. There's all these different modes. I stay out of the realistic and textured modes. Just it makes my computer go a little slowly. Even on views you don't have up in front of you, having them in those modes will definitely slow you down. Now, I also noticed my interior partition, I used the same wall type, so I want to duplicate that wall type and make an interior partition type so it doesn't paint that one separately. So now to change the wall so that there is kind of a skirt of a different color, you go back, edit that wall type, edit the structure where we were, make sure you're in section view, you have this preview and you have a section. And then what we can do, we want to split this layer here into 2 pieces. Well, guess what? There is a tool called Split Region, and you move that mouse over the regions of your wall. What you'll see, it's giving me a little weird dark theme here. If you see a line in the middle of the wall, it's going to cut the center layer. I figured out a way to, one, get an exact dimension without just kind of moving my cursor slowly, but also haven't figured out a way to force it into one layer or another. There's probably a way, but probably a little more internet research. Anyway, when you have your cursor at more or less a foot, and again, I don't really know if it's a foot or not, but if you click on that outer surface of the wall, you should get a 1 foot indicator there that shows that your wall face has been split. And you'll see in that layer, it says variable. And you can do this as many times as you like. And now I want to add a new finish layer. I'm going to insert another one, and we'll call this one the same one here, but we'll give it a different material. We'll give it that wall blue material. Okay. And now what we can do with that wall blue layer set, we can choose assign layers. And because this is, selected, when I click assign layers, I can mouse over different parts of the drawing, and I could assign that layer to those pieces. Obviously, I have only this one little section that I've kind of cut out. And do move your mouse slowly so you can get it right on that object. Sometimes I just have a little trouble, a little too much coffee. Anyway, when you do that, you will see that the dimension of that layer has jumped to match the 1/4 inch thickness of that object. And that's basically it. If you click OK and apply and OK, you're back out. And like magic, you have painted the exterior of the walls. So really handy way to create continuous finishes. Actually, one other really fun, handy thing that you can do is add things like wall base to these same walls. And this is actually how you can build up kind of very complicated walls. Right now we've been editing the structure of the wall, but there's a whole other area. Again, you have to be having the wall preview, and it has to be in section mode, but then you can add what are called sweeps. And sweeps are, we have used these before, they're things like wall base, right? So I can add in a whole layer, and the profiles that are available are really whatever's loaded into the project. So from right now, I don't believe I have any in here. So yeah, let's go and load in one of these families. They are under profiles. And what you'll see are different kinds of wall base. Let's just choose a simple wall base that probably would have been typical of that period, and choose load. And what you'll see when you dig back into the wall structure, that now that wall base shows up in your profile menu. Okay. You can also choose which side the base is on, the interior or the exterior. And if you remember, we have created a wall that's essentially backwards. So I guess I'll put this on the exterior, and you can move it up or down. And this is a great way you could totally build up a wall, adding sweeps. There are also what are called reveals, where you eat into the wall. This is particularly important if you have a brick wall. Often we have different kinds of coursing, courses that go in, courses that go out. You get a little shape to it. You can also even add things like a parapet cap to it in this same way. And don't forget, on the interior, interior partition type, you need to have 2 wall bases on that, one on the inside and one on the outside. Here, let me stretch this menu out a little so you can see it. You can see there's interior and exterior. So anyway, just make sure that you choose that. And there is, of course, the handy dandy duplicate button. And there you go. There's a lovely wall base on the inside of the project. Now, another profile that we can add just individually is a sweep that we can add to the edge of the roof. There's like a little bit of a detail on this roof edge, and sweeps are super easy to create. If you want to create a custom one, which I do, and you just go to the File menu and choose New, Family. And if you look down in this family type, you'll find that we have profiles. Hosted profiles are what we're looking for, and click Open. And what you'll see here, it has some handy dandy terminology to tell you where bits and pieces go. And you can, this is the host side here. This is the face of the host. And this is where it gets inserted. And so what we can do is draw the profile of the roof that we want. I believe, what did we say? The roof is about 16 inches, right? Something like that. You know, again, I'm not going to go out and measure it, but I believe there's two little pieces on either side. And I can just draw these. And the profile should be a continuous loop. And let's see, it looks a little uneven to me, and I could be more precise with this, but I think it's pretty even as far as it goes. And then let's save this guy onto our computer. We'll definitely want to call it roof profile or something like that so that we can remember what it's called. Click OK. So putting on a fascia onto a roof is actually pretty easy in Revit. You just go to the roof tool, and hidden underneath there is the fascia tool. And this works just like the slab thickening that we tried before. Choose roof fascia, and there is basically one available here, loaded in already. You might say, didn't we just make one? We did. Let's duplicate this, and we'll call it existing fascia. And what you need to do is choose the profile that you just created. And it should be here somewhere in the list, roof profile. That's what we called it, I believe. And apply and OK. And now when you come over to the roof tool and choose roof fascia, you should be able to mouse over the edge of the outer wall and place your custom fascia. And why doesn't it look right? It's because I forgot to hit OK. So you go back, edit type, and see it still says fascia 1x12. I must have just forgotten to click on my roof profile, hit apply, and OK. And there you go. And you should be able to apply that fascia to all elements of the roof. I think that's pretty close. It's not perfect. And we could assign materials and things like that to it. And again, like I've done before, I could use this create similar button and just start marching these fascia all around the building here. And so pretty quickly you have a very nice little profile added onto the building. And if it's not exactly right, I can go back, edit the profile, reinsert it, and like magic, it will change the project. One thing about these profiles, you can add them more than once. So for example, I don't like the way it kind of stops here. And it kind of gives not a great look at it. Honestly, it won't render any differently. But anyway, let me add another one in there, select it, and shorten it up in the other direction. Here, let me just select it. Oops, it's not selecting. There we go. And drag it over, and you see how now the line edge is a little cleaner. Again, you don't always want to be so anal retentive, but it is good to be a little anal retentive. Same with these guys. You see how the tops of them actually, you can see them through the roof, and it's because they're a little tall, so we have to move them down minus 16 inches and apply, and they'll go down to the right height. Finally, we do actually want to add in the open web steel joists that are in this project. Another thing I can add to the roof are the open web steel joists that are kind of underneath the roof. So let's do that. And those can be found in the AutoCAD library. So just go to Insert, Load Autodesk Family, and we should be able to find them. And you can actually just search for it. Open web steel joist is what they're called. And you can see here there's a rod versus an angle. These are probably rods. There's also a wood one, and Revit's great this way in that it has a lot of these, you know, heavy-duty construction elements. Click Load, and like we saw with the doors, you get this menu with which ones would you like to bring in. And I think the roof is probably about 2 inches thick, so I'm just going to grab one of these ones that has a 1'4" overall depth. The length you control when you place it, so click OK. And now when you draw it, you're going to go to a new tab, one we don't use all that much. It's the Structure tab. And joists are considered beams, even though they don't really look like beams. Let's go to the ceiling plan, though, so that we can draw these properly. Click the beam, and up pops whatever we just loaded in, which is the K. And when you place the structure, you are going to want to make sure that it's in the right spot. And right now it's going on the ground floor level. We actually want to put it on the roof level. And I believe the existing roof, it's not very thick, so maybe about 2 inches. So I'm going to make this beam go about 2 inches below the kind of solid part of the roof. Also, when you draw things here in the ceiling plan, we can draw it just fine. Sometimes those elements are hidden. We can go to the Visibility and Graphic Overrides menu, VG, or here, let's go and go down to the Visibility and Graphic Overrides menu in the Properties menu, so you can see me clicking it, and see if we can find that structural layer. And there you go, structural framing is not visible. Stinkers. Oh, it's still not visible, but it may be because it's inside the roof, because the roof is just as thick as the darn beam. Anyway, and we can copy this guy, or we could even array it. I believe there's only a couple here on the roof. And let's take a look at this in 3D. Oh yes, you can just see the kind of very little bit of it underneath the roof sticking out. So now we need to actually change the dimension of the roof. Let's come in here. Right now, the roof, if I remember, is 16 inches thick. So let's edit this, and we'll make it just 2 inches thick. And then we will have to move it up so that it's a little bit higher. Apply, and okay, you see how it now just went down, so now I have to move it up so it's not quite so far down, maybe only down 2 inches. There we go. We're back up where we should be. And if we go and look underneath, you can see the trusses and visible underneath. And I have to move up the other roof so that when you look at it from underneath, they show up. Actually, this outer wall does look a little short to me. It actually should probably attach to the upper roof, not the lower roof, so I'll use the attach wall feature. And that looks a little, it still didn't go up. So maybe I'll have to edit the profile to get it to go up. And of course, there's a warning message that it's going to remove the attachment. Actually, it does look like it's going up to the top of that roof. So maybe I'm just not seeing it right. I don't know. It's sometimes hard to tell what the heck is going on here. Sometimes when you're doing these things. Okay. But that does seem to have moved the outer wall up to the higher height. It probably is worth a little bit more study to make sure I'm not missing some piece here. I feel like there should be trim there. Anyway, and that's how you can really get a pretty nice look on your model. We'll add some further detail, including the landscape, in the next video.